everyone. Happy Sunday afternoon. My name is John Schall. I'm with Cruise Addicts, and I'm so glad to have you here. We're going to talk about Viking cruises today, and we have the privilege to have one of the best experts in the whole world, actually. He sells more Viking cruises than anyone else. He's Viking's global top producer for many, many years, and he's here today to answer your questions. If you're new to Viking, we hope this helps you learn about the Viking product. We're going to try to touch on those things. If you're a seasoned Viking cruiser, we hope we can give you some money-saving tips to teach you ways, things that you might not be thinking about, that you can just have top of your mind when you go on your trip, or maybe when you're planning it, things to think about to make your trip a little bit more of a better value and make it easier for you. So we'll get Michael in here. Hi, Michael. Thanks for joining us.
Hey, John. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we got so many people watching, and I know they want to learn a little bit more about Viking. If they haven't cruised with Viking, could you give us a little snippet? I know it's hard to say in a real quick sentence here, but what do you say to new cruisers to Viking? Why should they cruise with the Viking product?
I mean, I think it's, the Viking value. And a lot of times we talk about value, and I don't think that, value necessarily means cheap. Value actually means, that you're getting the most for your money. And I think that for most guests, they're surprised at the amount of value that Viking includes, with, complimentary bottled water, complimentary beer and wine with lunch and dinner, complimentary Wi-Fi, an excursion in every port. The value of the Viking experience, I think, is hard to compete with.
What it makes me think about something we've heard a lot about is the Viking chairman Hagen. He always says, we don't nickel and dime we don't fleece the customer on Viking. And I think that feels more and more ever present with some of the other big brands. As the ships get bigger, the add-ons and extra costs seem to be becoming more ever present, especially dining costs more. If you want water, it costs more. Just little things. It seems like every time you go on a bigger ship, there's an extra cost. And I think it's bringing a lot of customers that may have not cruised with Viking, maybe start going over to a Viking product that is more inclusive, right?
Yeah, I think that people are tired of being nickeled and dimed, and I think we see that with the mainstream lines too. They are many of them are adding benefits to their pricing, or including beverage packages, gratuities, and Wi-Fi at a little higher price than normal. So yeah, I'm seeing beverage packages that used to be the price per day, the per diem for actual cruise. Now you have to buy that to have, to not worry about specialty dining or beverages. And to me, it just seems like just more and more cost. You have the cruise fare, then you have the excursions, then you have the taxes and tips. It just on and on and on. And it just seems like it's getting a little bit too much for the consumer. Yeah, I think that's why Viking is so successful with what they offer.
Yeah, there were those types of things that were just, you don't have to worry about a lot of those things, right?
Yeah, and I think that it's and even with the excursions, having an included excursion in every port, it kind of limits what you're going to choose. Maybe for your optional excursions, there are options that are great for that. But if you just want to do one excursion a day, then the cruise line already has that blacked out for you, really.
Yeah. So we'll go over a few things with Viking. Obviously, they have beer and wine included with lunch and dinner, right? There's a tour in every port. And there's, of course, some optional ones that are usually really fantastic, but come at an extra charge. But you don't have to worry about tours because they're included. Also, let's see, specialty dining on the ocean ships are included, right?
Yeah, the ocean ships include specialty dining, and some of the categories include the mini bar, as well as some categories include the snacks and non-alcoholic beverages, and then others include all of that replenished daily. So it's a nice value for sure. Yeah.
So wow, we got so much going on here. So I was going to talk to you about this as far as, let's list off 3 top things consumers should be thinking about before they go on their Viking cruise to either save money or just make their value a little bit better.
Yeah, well, John, I have to mention it first because I think working with a qualified travel agent is probably the first thing you should guests should do, and we can talk about that more. But an agent is going to be able to make sure they're getting the best value money-wise, as far as making sure discounts and whatever. But travel insurance is very important. I think we spend a lot of time talking about that and how protecting the guest investment with travel insurance, making sure that they have coverage that is going to be able to reimburse them if an emergency comes up either before they're traveling or while they're traveling. Just this week, actually today, I had a client cancel because his wife was hospitalized. They're leaving in 4 days, and she had some heart issues, and they had to hospitalize her. So, and of course he has insurance, so he can worry about taking care of his wife and worry about getting the money back for the cancellation with the insurance later. So we highly recommend insurance. We think it's very important for our guests to have that protection, and I think it's something that people shy away from, that they really need to seriously think about when they're making purchases like the cruise or travel. And then also the value of having that coverage if you have an issue while you're traveling, a delay, somebody gets sick while they're traveling, or God forbid somebody has an emergency, that insurance is going to provide coverage for not only that emergency, but also the missed part of the trip. So it's really important to have it.
Yeah, and obviously picking the right policy. I know we've talked in depth about that. Is somebody might have the wrong policy, just doesn't match up to what they thought they were getting, and then we see things on the groups and forums out there where people just feel jilted because they didn't know what they bought, or they felt they bought something that was going to provide these things. So that's where a qualified agent can actually direct the client, because they want the best for the client. Where they don't, like you said, you get these phone calls, you don't want to worry about having the person stressing out about the trip because it's taken care of.
Right. We want them to be able to focus on the health emergency that they're having, or the family member that's sick or whatever, and not have to worry about how they're going to get their money back.
Right. And I think that's we've talked about some amazing things that have happened, and I'm glad that your clients were taken care of.
Yeah, for sure. So, and then, what people don't realize is that it also covers issues with travel delay. If the flights are delayed or canceled, the insurance is going to be responsible for assisting you in getting to the next port or getting to where you're going. So that's all really important too. There are just a myriad of reasons that people need to have insurance. I had a client whose luggage was stolen off of the luggage belt at the airport, and they weren't able to find it. And the insurance gave them a hefty amount of money to purchase clothing and replace what was missing.
That's wonderful. And, I know both of us just got back from vacations or trips recently, and there was several people I ran into that lost their luggage, and each of them have a story, because they first should say, "Hey, I'm sorry, I'm wearing the same clothes," or, they tell you what the ship did and didn't do. And then they talk about what their insurance didn't do. Right.
Right. And yeah. I mean, one of the best tips I can give clients when they're traveling is to make sure that they, that to use an AirTag, an Apple AirTag on their luggage. I mean, all of my bags have them, and I mean, I'm a little bit of a control freak with that stuff, so I love that I can see where it is. So I think that's a really smart suggestion, is, for people to use an AirTag in their luggage and be able to get, be able to tell the airline, look, it's still in Boston, so you're going to have to get it to me somehow, right? So that's been very, very beneficial to my clients, is to have, that added security of an Apple AirTag in their luggage.
And something I read recently was, it said, if you have, for example, if you have a direct flight from point A to point B, the chances of losing your luggage is pretty rare, right? But every leg after that, every connecting flight beyond that direct flight, the chances go up higher and higher because of all these handoffs, right? So of course that makes it more difficult. So try to find a direct flight if you can, but I know that's difficult these days.
Yeah, I mean, look, the direct flight thing is hard. I mean, there's always, most cities are going to require a connection on one end or the other, but it's just about, it goes back to what we started with, which is working with somebody that can help you navigate that and figure out exactly how you need to get there, and the recommended way to get there, the safest airports to go through, more reliable. I mean, air is becoming more and more difficult, so being able to have somebody that helps you navigate that and choosing the right connections, the right airports, the right airline, and it varies by every destination. So that's definitely an important thing to have.
Yeah, and I know we've got more tips, but for everybody watching, please ask your questions below. This really is for you. We want to sit there and make this available So if you have any questions, just want to check in and say hello. I know some people have already. We're going to get to these questions after we go over some tips, but please check in. Don't be shy. We'd love to hear from you. What trip do you have booked right now? It doesn't matter what line it is. We don't discriminate. We love cruising, obviously. So, wow. Yeah, so many great tips. So we've gone over insurance. We've gone over flights. Basically have someone help you with flights, use the air tags. And I know there's some other things you wanted to share.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about groups a lot. People call us and ask about traveling in groups. And, the cruise line considers, 8 cabins or more a group. And so when you have a family that wants to do a cruise with Viking, or a specific affinity group like a church group or a club organization, things like that, there are certain benefits that are really, really applicable to groups, really only applicable to groups, special savings and amenities. And so that is something else we get a lot of questions about. We're going to be 3 cabins. Is that considered a group? So the clarification on being able to provide guests that information of having it be 8 cabins or more. But then those groups that are 8 cabins or more, we have, amenities that we can offer them and special discounts only available to groups. And people like to have somebody to manage their group instead of being in charge of it, right? Because the number one question I get from somebody that's leading a group is, they have to take all the questions and all the payments and all that stuff. And the answer is no, that's what we're here for. We manage all of that for our group. So it's really important to know that, that there are benefits to working with groups. And then, the other benefit of working with an agent that can help you manage a group.
And it's funny you bring up groups because I think people nowadays, is the hustle and bustle of life. With group travel, someone like me or you that obviously is involved with cruising, if you just sit there and put it out there into your friends and family, give it enough time, like a year, or a year is a good time, and say, hey, I'm thinking about this. Maybe send an email or have a family chat opened up or something and say, I'm thinking about this. You'd be surprised how it spreads, because I think the point is, I think people are so busy, they don't want to think about it. They just want to go. So they know they wanted to, maybe they always wanted to go to the Mediterranean, but they don't want to plan everything. They just want to say, okay, we make a payment or whatever, what's it going to cost? Is it in their budget? And then they just go and they just have fun. And of course they're with friends and family, and that just is a bonus, right?
Yeah, I think, and people don't realize that they're going to go out to dinner with their friends and say, hey, we're going on this trip, or we're going on this trip. And it just kind of grows and grows. And that happens a lot. It's something that people, it builds up over time, like you said. So, so that's another way that guests can save money. If they are traveling with 8 cabins or more, there's the opportunity for group savings.
And I put Michael's information down below. If you're impressed with all his knowledge and what he's sharing right now, he'd love to hear from you. Please call him at, you can email him at michael@planmycruise.com. And of course, 1-800-913-7245. He'd love to work with you. I know we got a lot of people checking in here. We've got Stuart. Great to hear from you, Stuart. I hope you're doing well. And thanks for checking on YouTube today. Pat is also checking on YouTube. Great to see you, Pat. And hello. And we've got Lou Mello. Great to hear from you again, Lou. He's saying it's always enjoyable to hear and talk about Viking. Our 6th cruise with Viking is coming up in June of 2025 to Iceland, Greenland, Canada, and New York. So really, really cool.
Yeah.
And I know he's saying in 2 weeks, he's going to Oceana Vista and Athens to Spain, 20 days with 2 days in Athens in the pre-cruise. Really, really cool. Stuart's, they're doing Malta. He's doing Malta, Morocco, and the Med, the Viking in March, he's saying. And then we got Carrie Rowley checking in. She says our next cruise is the Grand European plus Alaska in 2025, Canada and Greenland in 2026. I like your choices there, Carrie.
Yep, absolutely.
And we got a question. Let's see here. Pat is checking, and she says, Michael, if I book a cruise a year out and include air, but before I make the final payment, before Viking ever books my flights, is there any issue with me deciding to cancel the air portion of the invoice? That's a great question, and I know I can hear your answer.
Yeah, I mean, we get a lot of questions about air, and thanks for being here, Pat. We get a lot of questions about air and the value of air. So it's a really great question, a timely question, since we're talking about how good the value is with planning a Viking cruise. Because usually Viking's air is, a great value for most guests because the pricing for the air is very good. There's a savings, with them, especially if they're traveling in economy or premium economy. So we help the guests figure out if that value is there for them with the air. But to answer Pat's question, usually the air can be removed anytime before the air is ticketed. As long as it's not ticketed, it can be removed and refunded. So it's really it's important to follow when the air is ticketed. But yes, Pat, if you book the air more than a year in advance and you decide later that you want to remove it, the cruise line will provide a refund as long as the air has not been ticketed. And ticketing usually is around 6 months prior to departure. So it's not really something that is going to happen right away.
Very nice. So I know you talked about maybe some specials coming up.
Yeah. So there are, we have the anniversary sale. So today is, August 18th. I'm looking at the date before I say it, August 18th, 2024. And currently we have the anniversary sale still going on with $25 per person deposits, which is a great way to hold the space for 25 or 26. And then there are some other specials that are available to guests that are already booked and want to book an additional sailing, some additional savings available to them for booking, a future cruise if they already have an existing booking. So that's some extra savings. And then we have some great last minute free air offers for 2024. So there's some great specials there, opportunities to save.
Are there any itineraries that stand out to you? Anything new that's come over the horizon since your last talk?
Yeah, there's a new, I know that we've had this Treasures of the Rhine, which Viking used to kind of test the waters for travel between January and March, which is usually not when river cruise ships travel. So they've had a good reaction to the Treasures of the Rhine itinerary, which again operates January through March. And so they've introduced Treasures of the Danube as well as an alternative for people that want to travel in the off season when it's colder, but want to be able to go on a river cruise. And those, of course, are very value priced because it is off season, and some great options there for cruising the Danube during the off season. So
yeah, I know those are some of our favorite. I mean, you've talked about the Danube and the Rhine. I know the Rhine's your favorite. So it's a great deal. And like we talked about value or some savings there, you're basically off season. They created a whole off season of cruises where you can save a lot of money compared to the high season in summertime, right?
Yeah, and it's a really nice itinerary because it's 10 days, and it starts at the standard cabin starts at $23.99. So it's a really nice itinerary, and I believe air starts at $5.99.
Oh wow, so that's a great value.
Yeah, it's a good deal.
Yeah, and I've always cruised during the Christmas markets prior. I've done the Danube and the Rhine, and I loved it. And the big thing to me was people were telling me, because I'd never been there, but they'd say, "Listen, if you were here during the high season, there'd be people everywhere. So it's hot. Of course, there's more people. So you get to see these wonderful sights. It's cooler, and you don't have to fight the crowds as much, if at all."
Yeah. And there is a trade-off because it is colder, cooler weather. If you want to say it mildly, January in Germany can be, cold. So, and then, there are things that are, some stores and restaurants that may not be open at that time of the year that would normally be open during high season. So it is a trade-off, but it's a great way to, get a great value on a cruise in the off season. So, and we're happy to see that Viking is offering something during those times because, for years we say, oh no, the river cruises don't travel between January and March, but we can't say that anymore. So,
yeah. So we've got a question for you, Michael. Joy is checking in from YouTube. She goes, if partner and I have TripMate, does this insurance cover my hotel or early flight home if partner gets sick, hospitalized overseas for a few days?
So the TripMate policy covers the time frame that you're traveling. under Viking's plan. So if your hotel is booked through Viking, your flights are booked through Viking, then all of that is covered under the TripMate policy. So if partner and I have TripMate, does the insurance cover my hotel or early flight home if partner gets sick, hospitalized overseas? Yes, so it would. The TripMate policy also has trip interruption coverage and would cover the expenses related to that, and also the missed time that you would have on the trip. But there are alternatives to the cruise lines policy that would provide if you had coverage, or if you wanted to have coverage outside of what you're doing with Viking, like if you have your own hotel or you're buying your own air, a third party policy that we offer, for instance, would be able to cover additional expenses that you don't have directly with the cruise line. So that's an important thing to consider when purchasing insurance.
Yep. And Lou was just saying, he goes, we did the Christmas markets last December on the Danube, and it was cold and wonderful. Yeah, it's really, really cool. Yeah, so really nice. So let's think of some. I know you talked about some other tips we haven't got to yet about currency.
Yeah, so a lot of questions that we get are related to local currency and how do people obtain local currency, or what's the best way to obtain local currency? And we talk about that, a lot with our guests. And our recommendation is to make sure your bank knows you're traveling and utilize the ATM. The ATM is going to give you the lowest, most banks are going to give you the lowest exchange rate in the past 60 or 90 days. And then also charge you a nominal fee of like $5 for taking money out of a foreign ATM, as opposed to paying, a 10 or 15% exchange rate, not exchange rate, but convenience fee for exchanging money before you leave the States. It is really the best way to get local currency. Take it out of an ATM and then get it as you need it. And then you're not coming home with, a bunch of currency that you don't necessarily need, or are going to lose again when you have to exchange that currency back to US dollars to come back to the States. So that's really the best way to get local currency.
And do people actually have to tip their bus driver and guide? And how much is that normally? I guess people.
It's really at your discretion, right? And is it expected? Probably not. Maybe in some countries rather than others. That's something that, we could advise the guest as they work with us. But in general, $1 or $2 euros for the bus driver, and then maybe €5 or dollars for the guide if you think they've done an exceptional job. Again, I don't think it's expected all the time, but it is something that I think people feel good about doing if they've had a great experience with a tour guide and a bus driver. So, it's something that's at your discretion. But, and that's another thing that goes back to what we were just talking about. I get a lot of questions about whether or not the bus drivers and guides would rather have local currency, or would they take US dollars? The answer is they'll take US dollars. They'll take whatever you're willing to give them. But of course, it's going to cost them to exchange it. So that takes away from what you're actually giving them. So they obviously would prefer to have local currency.
Very nice. Thank you for that answer. And I tell you, what is what itinerary is the most in most demand right now at your office?
Well, the top itineraries I think for ocean are probably British Isles Explorer, Viking Homelands, or a Mediterranean Odyssey. So the British Isles Explorer is like London to Bergen or Bergen to London. Viking Homelands, which is going to be mostly the Baltic, is going to be Bergen to Stockholm or Stockholm to Bergen. And then Mediterranean Odyssey, which would be Venice to Barcelona or vice versa. So a lot of people really are looking to do those itineraries. I think for river, the Grand European is probably the most popular. And then, the Danube and the Rhine following. There's a big demand for the Douro always. That book's very far in advance. And believe it or not, Egypt is still really, really popular.
Oh, wow. I know that Viking was building a lot of new ships there and continued to.
Yeah, they still have added more ships. So, yeah.
Do you think that do you still have people calling you last minute for itineraries like that are really in high demand?
I mean, I think that, it's really difficult because for 24 and 25, we have guests call and they're like, oh, we want to do this, we want to do that. And a lot of the itineraries are already really well sold. It's a condition or an environment where we're seeing, things sell much further in advance. The demand is much higher. And so, the last minute deals or the, people that want to book like, for the holidays this year, or like when people earlier in the summer, they wanted to book Alaska. I mean, it's very hard to do. It's, a lot of that is very well sold. So, the last minute options are few and far between, but because guests are booking further and further out to get the better value.
I imagine you have a lot of people. I mean, knowing people, a lot of people think at the last minute or 6 months before the cruise, or they get they all get together and all of a sudden they say, let's do this, or let's get together, but then it's too late, right?
Yeah. I mean, we help them find something that will work, but it's not as easy as just saying, hey, I want to do this and let's pick a cabin. We have to, and then especially like with extensions, like pre and post extensions, there are some extensions that are more desirable or more popular than others. And so finding the right cabin on the right itinerary with the right pre or post extension, that can be a real challenge sometimes.
Yeah, we've got a few comments here from Lou said, he goes, that's exactly what he does. $3 to bus driver and $5 to tour guide for a half day tour, 10 for a full day tour. Well, he's a good tipper.
Yeah.
Good job, Lou. That's and then Mary's actually said, she had a comment, recently had excursions sign up for Malta, Morocco, December. It was a frenzy. Many popular excursions were sold out within minutes. Is Viking open additional spaces, or are we out of luck? So I guess that's a question. Yeah. I've heard about this before, haven't we?
Yeah. So, I mean, Viking provides or releases the excursions based on category booked. So the highest category first, the owner suite, then it trickles down to the explorer suites, then to the penthouse junior suites, then to the penthouse verandas, then to the deluxe verandas, and then lastly to the verandas, the V1 and V2. So by the time they get to the deluxe verandas, and especially when they get to the V1 and V2, the excursion times have been, kind of picked over. So, you may end up with the included excursion later in the day than you want it to be and not be able to choose an optional excursion. So it's really important that somebody help guide you on the category to book, especially on certain itineraries, because the demand for the excursions on certain itineraries is higher than others. And so that really can affect, the overall experience. So it's really important to take that into consideration and work with somebody that's going to know, where the demand is greater for the cruise lines excursions than there are for other itineraries. But to answer your question, it's possible they would add more space. The included excursions typically are always guaranteed. And so if you're not assigned an included excursion online during the booking process of the excursions, then you will be assigned one on board the ship. And I just want to clarify for people that are new to this is specifically to ocean. For river, the process is completely different. So ocean and expedition are excursions open based on category booked. The other thing is to just watch My Viking Journey, because people cancel and change excursions all the time. Those ships are 934 guests, and there are 934 guests that are manipulating what they want to do when over the course of 3 or 4 months before they actually travel. So the best advice I could give you, Mary Ellen, is to keep an eye on My Viking Journey and check on that excursion that you're looking for regularly.
Yeah, and of course, if you don't see it when you first when you get on board, you can always check as well, because it seems like things change quite a bit once you get on board too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Lou had a comment about, he says, we always book 2 years in advance, generally best price, and we get what we want on the ship. So that's a great, and he also said, I found that if we book it's a penthouse veranda, I believe, that you get the excursions you want, also go online the morning that they open up for your category. Great advice there. And Becky is checking in from YouTube. She goes, Michael, what are the differences between going to Alaska on a Viking cruise as opposed to another cruise line?
Well, I think the biggest difference is going to be that Viking's Alaska cruise is 10 nights, right? So it's going to have, more ports than the other cruise lines are going to offer, because most of the other cruise line ships are only going to be 7-day itineraries. So, I mean, aside from the Viking value that we've already talked about, the excursions being included, the Wi-Fi, complimentary beer and wine with lunch and dinner, complimentary bottled water, complimentary specialty dining, which are all factors I think that are contribute to what is going to be better about a Viking Alaska cruise. You're also going to see more, you're going to be in port longer, and you're going to visit more ports and have more excursion options because of that. So I think that that's going to be the biggest difference between what Viking offers in Alaska and what other lines do.
And don't forget the free self-service laundry, which actually can add up if you're on a long trip.
Exactly.
It's everything's included. You just have to take your time. And of course, they have the service where they'll press it and do everything for you. But if you want to do it on your own, it's available, which is such a nice thing when you're on a long trip.
Yeah, and I think that in the penthouse junior suites and above, complimentary laundry service is also a great amenity as well, so that you don't even have to do your own laundry; somebody else will do it.
That's great. Yeah, and Stuart Little's checking in again. He says the couple that joined us on our most recent cruise had only been on Viking River, and on their feedback forms, they said that they were very impressed and would go on a Viking Ocean. So really, really nice.
We find that too. We find that a lot of our guests really, love the river experience, and Viking works very hard to have consistency between those experiences on river and ocean. And the ocean product obviously offers more amenities, more cabin options, things like that. So yeah, people who do the river and then go to ocean also really love the ocean product.
Yeah, and Mary's checking in. She goes, "Thank you, Michael. And we booked us. Oh, you booked us on. I'm not sure what PB2 is.
Penthouse Veranda. That's the yeah.
PB2 for Malta, Morocco, and Med. Lesson learned. I'll keep checking my Viking journey. So awesome. Yeah, we hope you find your excursion you're looking for. I know on the Viking Octanus trip I took, it seems like things were kind of people were trying different things, and it just seems like the more you went up to the desk to check, things would open up. So
yeah. And thanks again for being here, Mary Ellen. We appreciate your questions and participating in the webinar today.
Yes, thank you. And wow, so we're catching up on our questions here. If you have any questions, concerns, just want to comment, check in, let us know what trips you're thinking of that you have booked. We'd love to hear from you. Of course, Michael's here to answer your questions. If it's something about airfare, I know Viking Air Plus, right, is a big thing. Insurance is a big thing. All kinds of stuff. I'm curious to the group of how many bags do people normally bring when they go on a cruise? You see these folks, Michael, that where they're really passionate about it, where they say they only carry on their luggage, which I don't know how you do that.
Yeah.
But they do. You do see people doing that. They've got all kinds of carry-ons, and both people have a carry-on and they have a personal item. It's like a backpack that, But I'd be curious. I know we've asked this on the group before, and it's either yin or yang, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, there's no way I could ever travel with everything I need in a carry-on. So, I mean, I have so much stuff I bring for work that fills my carry-on bag. So, I mean, more power to those people that can pack all their stuff into one carry-on bag for a 14-day European cruise. I am not that person, unfortunately, but one of these days I hope to be. But people ask us about packing and luggage and all that stuff. And does the ship have a limit for the luggage? And the answer is, the question is no. The ship really doesn't limit what you can bring. However, the airline does. And so you want to be sure you familiarize yourself with what limits the airline has for you when as far as checked luggage and carry-on luggage, because it varies by airline, it varies by class of service, that kind of thing.
So this last trip we took, I packed the most luggage I've ever packed in my life, just because we had an idea what we were going to do, right? And then at the 12th hour, we realized that the bags, it wasn't going to work. and of course we wanted a little bit of room. So I had all these bags, and we were trying to figure out how do you get it to the airport? I'm using these carts, which I've never had to use before, and just the logistics can be a real nightmare. But I guess I still do admire people that could just do a carry on, because I don't think it'll ever happen in my lifetime. But I'm always impressed.
Yeah, I'm always impressed with that too. And fortunately, it's never me. It's always somebody else that can do that.
But I did see a lot of people. I think I'm figuring out how they do it. As far as just they've got clothes they wear and certain types of clothing and different mix and matches and stuff like that. I mean, there's a science to it.
Yeah.
But I know Becky has a question here. She goes, "What is the best Viking trip to take to experience Ireland and England?"
Yeah, it definitely would be the British Isles Explorer itinerary. It is a really great itinerary for that part of the UK, and it is one of the most, as I mentioned earlier, it's one of the most popular itineraries, so it sells pretty quickly. And Viking dedicates a lot of ships to that itinerary, so it's surprising how fast it sells with the amount of inventory they have on there. But I would recommend looking at it at least a year in advance to make sure that you get, the cabin category that you're looking for, or the extensions that you're looking for. That is something that we have found. It's, as we mentioned earlier, that's one of those itineraries where we end up looking for a date based on the excursions that people want. So yeah, I would really recommend looking at that earlier rather than later.
Okay, great advice. And Brian is checking in from YouTube. He says, "Hello from Ohio," and back to you, Brian. He's going on the Grand Hawaiian in October in Panama Canal through you guys. In your opinion, is it better to visit Europe or on Viking River or ocean?
Well, I mean, I think if you want to see this, Central Europe, the best way to do that is by river. If you want to see, the coastal cities, the best way to do that would be by ocean. And I know that's a very obvious answer, but I mean, they both have their pluses, and it would be hard for me to choose until we actually talked about an itinerary, what you want to see. So, yeah, it's very, it's very subjective. So that is something that we can help you with. Brian, I know you're already working with us, and I'd love to chat with you about it. We can certainly find you the right choice.
And I highly recommend it. I have to chime in my opinion because that's what I do. I love the Christmas markets, so I think that's definitely worth doing. So I highly recommend that.
Yeah, I would agree. It's a great experience.
Yeah. So wow, we're getting a little caught up here on the comments, and we appreciate everybody checking in. Please don't stop. We've got more time left. We'd love to hear your questions, concerns, anything like that. And I'm trying to think of some other tips that we haven't shared yet, Michael. I know there's so much little things. That's another thing Viking does: umbrellas and water. They had that water. You don't get that on a big cruise line.
Yeah, absolutely. You're going to be grateful they have bottled water that you can take with you on the tours. And of course, there's always the availability of umbrellas for when it might be raining, that kind of thing. And, look, they do a great job on the ocean ships. They have, maps you can take off with you. Many of the cities have, shuttle service that you can go take the shuttle into the city if you don't want to do the included tour. There's a lot really that Viking includes that others do not. So,
and that makes me think of another subject that we haven't touched on in a little while. Is I know, and I even heard people on this last cruise I was on, where a lot of times these repeat cruisers, they may have visited this destination. Maybe they've done the Rhine River cruise before, or been at an other destination. But Viking has a concierge on board that can actually get you set up tours and make a tour for you. So you can either go to a certain restaurant or something like that. And basically, for someone that's a seasoned cruiser that has been to that spot maybe several times, they can carve out an itinerary during the day that can make that special, destination more special for them, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, that's one of the benefits of being on board a Viking ship is they have a whole, desk dedicated to helping make sure people see what they want to see and what they want to do ashore. And, that's something that we can help with beforehand if there's something that Viking doesn't offer that the guest necessarily wants to do. that kind of thing. So, but that's definitely important to the experience of seeing the part of the world that they're visiting, is making sure that they get to see what they want to see.
Yeah, and I know certain people, people are like that. They go there, they want to visit a specific particular spot that wouldn't be in a normal tour.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Mary's checking in. She says, we would really like to do Egypt of the Nile. Is it safe? Great question.
I mean, our clients have been traveling there since this whole conflict started, and obviously they're not visiting Israel, but our guests are telling us that they feel very safe and comfortable with how things are being taken care of. So I think that you have to decide how comfortable you are, but I can tell you that our guests that have traveled have felt very comfortable and safe, and that they've always had an extra level of security on these itineraries anyway. So I think that Viking's going to make sure that their guests and their crew are safe at all times.
Very nice. And you say, like you said, they're in great demand. That there's a constant demand to still travel there, right?
Right, and they don't want to put anybody in harm's way. If there was, if they felt it was, too dangerous or whatever, they wouldn't operate it. They would cancel the sailing. Again, they're not going to put their own crew or their reputation with their guests at risk in that way.
Right, and what an amazing experience that'd be to see that part of the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actually doing it next November. I'm looking forward to it. So
wonderful. And Lisa is checking in from Facebook. Hello, Lisa. And she says, "Hi, Michael. Can you talk about the Northern Lights cruises? Are there any 7-day ones? Are the excursions generally more demanding than other destinations?"
Are the excursions generally more demanding than other? Well, I mean, it depends. They offer a variation of excursions that some would be more demanding than others, like the Zodiac rides or the 4x4s, things like that. But there are options that are not necessarily to extent, are going to require too much physical activity. So you really can choose the excursion based on the level of physical activity, and that's how they're presented to you. So so I think that the Northern Lights cruises are, especially in the off season, they are during cold periods of time. So there's going to be snow and ice and things like that. So that might be a limitation for some people, but the excursions themselves are going to be offered at different levels. So there'll be different levels of excursions, offered in each of the ports.
Very nice. And are some of them 7 days, or because I know most Viking cruises aren't 7 days, right? They're usually longer than that.
The Northern Lights cruises are longer than that. So the Northern Lights cruises, I believe, are 12 nights. So they're going to be longer than 7 days. So there aren't any 7-day ones for that. The ones that visit Norway, the only one that I can think of that visits Norway is not going to be during the Northern Lights, and it is Viking Shores and Fjords.
Okay, very nice. And Carrie is checking again. She just said, we last traveled an expedition cruise to the Great Lakes. Our excursions opened shortly before the cruise. For the Grand European next May, I see excursions already open on the MVJ. Is this normal? So here's that kind of ocean/river excursion differences, right?
Yeah, so river opens much earlier because it's a much smaller ship, 210 passengers versus 934 passengers. And so it's much easier for them to manage the included and optional excursions. So they do offer them all at one time to everyone, usually between 8 and 11 months prior to departure.
And Pat has a question for you, Michael. Have you been on an expedition cruise with Viking, Michael? And then she says, you booked the Patagonia, Chilean fjords for me in November 2024. So I'm super excited. Is there anything special that she should look for being on board an expedition vessel?
Yeah, great question, Pat. Thanks for the question. And yes, I have been on, I've been on the expedition ships 3 times, and every time is just an outstanding experience. If you love river and you love the ocean, you're going to absolutely adore the expedition ships. It's a very different experience because they are 300 plus passengers, but the dining is set up, especially like in the World Cafe, set up very differently. They have like a steak and seafood bar where you can go up and order, lobster, different types of steaks, different types of seafood, and it's cooked to order. And they have all kinds of things. So all the things that you can normally find in the dining room on the expedition ships, you can find in the World Cafe. But it's a really outstanding experience at this steak and seafood bar, simply because the expedition ships, people are off the ship all day. They're in Zodiacs, they're exploring, and when they come back to the ship, they don't necessarily want to get dressed and go to the dining room. So the World Cafe, I think, sees more traffic because of that, and the dining room seats less people because of that. So they also have Manfredi's as well. They do not have the chef's table, but the World Cafe also has an incredible sushi bar, a dedicated sushi bar that's you can see them obviously making the sushi, a little bit different than it is on the ocean ship. So it's a really dedicated space that's Asian themed, and it just is a really great experience. And I think people love the intimacy of those ships. The design of the cabins with the floor to ceiling window, the window that drops down so that you can open it when you want to. And, the use of the submarines and the Zodiacs and the SOBs, the Swiss operations boats or special operations boats. It's really just an incredible experience. You're going to absolutely love it.
Yeah, they have the weather balloons they launch regularly because they have a team of scientists on board. And the World Cafe, Michael touched a lot on it, but it has like a food hall setup. I knew it was different, but when someone pointed out, it kind of looked like was set up almost like a food hall. You have these different stations like breads and focaccia and pizza, and you watch the chefs are right there like an open kitchen working on all these things. So it's really, really exciting to see all this culinary work being done right there. It's so fresh. Donuts.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. They have a bread bar where they bake all the bread, so you can see all of that. They have a little bit of a play on the gelato thing where they do it like Cold Stone Creamery. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of really incredible food options on those ships.
Yeah, those two ships are some of my favorite. Really love them. They're beautiful and they're decorated from bow to stern, just beautifully decorated in the Viking style that we really, really enjoy. But I've never seen a vessel that's so themed from in all areas.
Yeah, absolutely. Really incredible experience.
Yeah, I love it. And they're beautiful, the ship itself. So, wow, we've touched on a lot. I know we got some great questions. Thank you to Pat, Carrie, Lisa, of course, Lou, Becky, Mary. We really appreciate it. We've got a few more minutes left. If you're thinking about anything, please let us know. We really appreciate y'all being here, taking the time this Sunday afternoon. Michael, what's the biggest question you get from your clients that you might not have touched on yet?
I don't know. Gosh, we've talked about a lot today. So we get a lot of questions about air, a lot. Air is the biggest thing, and whether or not it's worth doing Air Plus and that type of thing. And so, I think that air is a big part of the experience. So it's something that people really want to be comfortable with, that they're doing. And so the Viking Air, they offer, an air schedule, which will be assigned about 120, 150 days prior to departure. But if you want to have a say as to how that flight is routed within the contracted rates that Viking offers, you can pay for the Air Plus, which is $150 per person, and have a say as to how the flights are routed within the cruise line's contracted rates. And we think that's a really good thing to add to the booking, just because we like for people to be comfortable with their flights, and we help them find the right flights and the right connections and all of that. And so they don't have to worry as much as we read all these nightmares on the Facebook page or on the internet about air and what happened to people's schedules and things like that. And we think that, the Air Plus option of being able to say have a say as to how the flights are routed and that kind of thing is very important to the overall experience.
Yeah, and Pat says she's probably going to overeat. I tell you, that ship is incredible, Pat. You're really going to love it. And don't forget Mamson's. They've got a Mamson's on board. So you have all those wonderful, the success cake, which is incredible, the soups, the different sandwiches, really, really nice. And of course, all the other lovely things. And, people don't talk about this. I know it was pointed out to me when I first did my Viking Ocean, is Viking has some of the best room service. So if you're someone that likes to spend an extra time on an ocean cruise, they don't have it on river, which I wish I did. But if you're someone that likes to spend some extra time in your cabin and your itinerary allows you to, be sure to get the breakfast, some of the great breakfast. But also they have 24-hour room service, so their lunches are really nice. Of course, anything else that you choose to do, really, really wonderful. Yeah, Lou saying the waffles.
John, people are going to think that we think about food too much. I mean, they ask us about all the benefits of the ship, and we're talking about the mini bar and the food. So,
well, two Italian guys talking about food, go figure, right?
I have to say, is a big part of the experience. But yes, there are a lot of things about those ships that are incredible, and the food is among them.
Yeah, it's really, really nice. You're wonderful. I was thinking, so yeah, I've talked to that. It just came to me just about I was thinking of something else that I was going to say. I'll have to think about it. So we got a couple more minutes left here. I'm trying to think of anything else we can bring up. I know we've got some great questions. Lou's been sharing so much. Oh, so that's what I want to ask you. Did you touch on actually how much, because I know you've recommended Air Plus, but did you share how much it actually costs? Because we've done whole live streams on this where you basically really recommend that all your clients have Air Plus. And I know you have some of your clients watching right now. So you always recommend Air Plus. And how much does that cost?
It's $150 per person.
And could you tell us again, it gives you the flexibility and stuff that the client can get what they want for just a little bit of money, right?
Yeah. Within the cruise line's contracted rates. So the cruise line does have, limited contracts for certain seats on certain airlines on certain flights. And so it gives us a say earlier in the process to figure out what the best schedule is within those contracted rates. So it is definitely a good value for people that want to have a say and some control over the air schedule.
And then the second thing that you always touch on too, I just want to add, is you also really, you have a third-party product, proprietary product that you can sell for insurance to your clients. And that's something you always recommend that your clients do, because when we started off the live stream is you get these phone calls where something's interrupted, something comes up either during the trip or before the trip, and these products can cover everything if you're either staying at your own hotel or whatever accommodations you have, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, we talked at the very beginning about how what the value that Viking offers, and that value doesn't necessarily mean cheap or inexpensive. So these trips, they're not inexpensive, and we really feel strongly that guests should protect their investment with some sort of travel insurance. And it is really important to have that, because I've said this 100 times on these live streams that we've done before. People say to me, "Oh no, we're definitely going." Well, I mean, are you definitely going if your mother has a heart attack or somebody, there are things that happen, if your house floods, that kind of thing, that you really have to, it's not for the things that you anticipate happening. It's for those things that you don't anticipate happening. And, it's really important to have that type of coverage before you travel, while you're traveling, the medical, the trip interruption, the delays, that type of thing. So, and having somebody advise you properly on the best way to cover your trip is important. The Viking team, they have their policy that they offer, but, working with a travel agent, they're going to be able to help you find other options for travel insurance that may be better coverage for you, and help you determine the best option for you.
And while we're touching on this, how can actually people, if they're not using you already, I know you've got a lot of clients, how can they reach out to you to answer more questions in a personal way, over the phone or in person?
Yeah, but with my email address at michael@planmycruise.com, or 800-913-7245.
Great. And I know Carrie had a question here, and she said, Michael, are you able to book first class using Air Plus and select the seats? She, of course, prefers Delta One as well.
Yeah, so I mean, in a lot of ways, you can have a say as to the airline. I mean, Viking purchases a lot of Delta tickets, so it's one of their biggest suppliers. First class domestically is not something that Viking typically offers. So to answer your question, it's a little bit more complex. In the United States and Canada, they do not offer first class. Business class overseas, they do offer, so you can do Delta One overseas. Inside the U.S., they're pretty much going to only offer U.S. and Canada. They're pretty much only going to offer economy through Viking, but you can purchase business class. So Viking offers economy, premium economy, which is not to be confused with comfort plus or economy comfort. So they offer economy, premium economy, and business class on most itineraries.
Very nice. And so they pay a little bit more, right? They'd have to pay extra.
For the premium economy and business class,
right.
There's a significant price difference between the three. Significant price difference between economy and premium economy, and definitely an even more significant difference in price for economy to business class. So, you know, it is. We get a lot of people that are like, "Oh, give me a business class price," and when they find out that it's, you know, $4,000 or $5,000 a person for business class, it's a shock to them, right? But you know, the planes are very limited. They have, you know, 36 business class seats, and they have, you know, 300 economy seats. So it's definitely a different animal.
I guess my question is it like if you did it through Viking, like she was talking about, do you get a little bit of a contract rate difference?
Usually the pricing will be better, and there are a lot of reasons why the Viking option is better. And those are the things that, you know, it varies by guest. So, you know, it falls into that. There's not a one size fits all answer to that question. It's something that we help the guests figure out what's best for them.
Right. So we're almost at closing here. I'm trying to think of any last words or things that are looking out for the future for Viking. Anything that you're looking forward to? Any announcements might be made soon? That I know you have a lot of inside track on things. So I don't know if you want to leave our audience with some stuff we can talk about in the future that might happen.
Yeah, we're looking forward to the 26th, the late 26 itineraries come out, you know, the fall season for 26, the World Cruise for 27. You know, the World Cruise is something that books very, very quickly. So we're looking forward to, you know, helping our guests that we have waiting for that to come out, get those set up. But we're looking forward to some new itineraries here soon, I think.
Very nice. And I guess we'll end it here. We've covered quite a bit. Thank you for your patience, Michael, as we covered all kinds of topics. I know I pushed you on some things, but we also appreciate everybody that's joined us. You've stuck around for almost the whole hour. Really appreciate that. I know it's been a little while since we were on here, but we thank you all for spending some time with us this afternoon. Please give us a like, thumbs up, a subscribe wherever you're watching us on YouTube or any other things. We'd love to have you back. And of course, stay tuned for our future live streams as we have Michael and other guests here share their insights on all the in-tried track with Viking and other brands. So until we meet again, thank you.
Thanks, John. Have a good weekend.
You too.
Bye-bye.